Hello everybody, I'm some Loudmouth on the internet with an opinion. Chances are that if you're a child of the 90s, as I was, you probably remember the Disney afternoon. Yes, it was right there playing when you came home from school, and many of the best cartoons from the 90s were there. Many were shows that spun off old classic characters, shows like DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, all managed to put characters of yesteryear in fun and new adventures. But while all those shows were memorable in their own unique way, the show I'm going to be focusing on did something very unique and different for a Disney cartoon. After Batman the Animated Series premiered and started to attract a more mature adult audience to animated programs, Disney decided to make a response to it with an action cartoon, one that was much darker and much more mature than any other cartoon show Disney had ever produced before or has ever produced since. That's why in 1994, the amazingly badass Gargoyles premiered. Gargoyles is fondly remembered by many, not just because it stood out from the pack, but because it was a genuinely fantastic show. The animation was some of the best ever seen in a television series at the time, with some shots that neared theatrical quality presentations. The story followed a group of mythical creatures known as gargoyles, stone statues during the day, and flesh and blood warriors by night. After being cursed to sleep for 1,000 years, wake up in modern-day New York. The action, which often consisted of epic aerial battles, was exciting. The voice acting, which consisted of many of the cast of Star Trek The Next Generation, among other great talent, added fantastic weight to events.
Face me, human, if you dare.
But I shall do it. I can scare those cowards away without any help.
I was a little worried that I might be getting soft, but I was able to stand up against Goliath, the greatest warrior alive. I'd say I've still got the edge.
Seriously, did anyone ever expect to see a scene like this in a Disney cartoon?
Cool. Let's go, Pilgrim, and don't forget the horse. Oh! Sorry, my fault. I was playing with the gun. Stupid of me. Hope I didn't break anything. Elisa? Oh.
Damn! But probably the thing that made the writing so strong was the world Gargoyles built. It borrowed heavily from Shakespeare and many mythologies for its fantasy elements, and it combined them with various sci-fi elements, and had many other stories that took the route of being crime thrillers. Gargoyles covered many different genres, which gave the series a large variety, but also did so without any jarring tonal shifts or inconsistent lore. At least for the first 2 seasons. In Season 3... they, got betrayed by the Disney executives they had sworn to protect. Sadly, when the show was renewed for a 3rd season, it was moved from the Disney afternoon to ABC's One Saturday Morning. That may not seem like it would make much difference, but the move from syndicated to network resulted in the creative team being given far less creative freedom. This resulted in a large creative shakeup, with nearly the entire creative team behind the show being replaced. The new creative team didn't have the time to familiarize themselves with the material or the show's lore, and the results showed. Even the main series showrunner Greg Weisman quit the show only a single episode into Season 3, which was later renamed Gargoyles The Goliath Chronicles. Greg Weisman went as far as to declare the entire 3rd season non-canon, and most fans regard the end of Hunter's Moon, the last episode of Season 2, as the finale of the series proper. For those unfamiliar with Greg Weisman, he's not only the creator of Gargoyles, but also one of the creative minds behind several great animated series, including Young Justice, The Spectacular Spider-Man, and Star Wars Rebels. All of which are damn good shows, all of which are often much better adaptations of those characters and properties than many live-action entries. Weisman even created a comic book series that continued Gargoyles from Hunter's Moon, while ignoring the Goliath Chronicles. And while the rest of the series has been released on DVD, the Goliath Chronicles hasn't even gotten that. Next to nobody cares. But I do so love examining how something potentially good eventually goes bad. And I think doing so really does help build a better appreciation of the entire series proper and the original cast and crew behind it. It really does show how talented Wiseman and the other crew behind Gargoyles really are when you see what the whole series could have been with a less talented group of people behind it. And for that, I will be reviewing on this channel Gargoyles The Goliath Chronicles. I'm going to mostly skip the first episode, The Journey, because, well, it's good. As I said, it was the last episode Weinstein wrote before leaving, and I have little to complain about it except for a few nitpicks, though I will be coming back to it to show just how later episodes deviate from the direction it's set up, and entirely for the worse. Hell, the first 2 issues of the previously mentioned comic book series by Weinstein are pretty much just a comic book adaptation of this episode, with only minor differences. Both comic and animated form of The Journey set up the public's reaction to the existence of gargoyles being fully exposed that would define the rest of the season, particularly the creation of the Quarrymen, a clearly KKK-inspired hate group dedicated to destroying them out of fear and bigotry. Sadly, the show's writers never were able to tackle such ambitious themes in a meaningful way, as we will find out.
I won't be defeated by the likes of you.
Brave words for a man who hides his face behind a hood.
No, instead I'm going to start with Ransom, the first non-Wiseman canon episode of Gargoyles, and we get to see here how the show started to take the wrong direction. This is my review of Gargoyles The Goliath Chronicles, Ransom. The first deviation with the first 2 seasons is that every Goliath Chronicles episode opens with Keith David, the voice of Goliath, monologuing the moral of the episode you're about to watch.
The human passion for money is an emotion that gargoyles do not understand. When wealth is used toward health and security, we appreciate the value in its fevered creation. But when riches simply adorn or fuel ambition, we see envy, discord, and the temptation to sacrifice all righteousness to achieve them.
Because our audiences are obviously much too stupid to understand extremely heavy-handed messages if they are not directly spoon-fed to them at the beginning of the episode. This is gonna hurt, isn't it? We start the episode for real with a scene with Lex in a toy store trying to find a toy to give to baby Alex. Yes, I know he does leave money and thus he's not really stealing it per se, but this is a lot of effort to go to just to get a toy for a kid whose parents are billionaires. There's really nothing better you could be doing with your time, Lex. We then jump to Goliath and Angela, who from a high perch are watching a political rally for mayor as the candidate Patrick Doyle makes a genocidal campaign pitch.
And the first step Mr. Doyle will take when elected mayor is to root out those filthy gargoyles from whatever sewer they live in and exterminate them!
What did we ever do to him?
The sad truth is that it is often easier to excite people with hatred than with reason.
The idea of a political candidate pandering to fear and bigotry of the population in order to get elected is actually a very interesting one, and there are certainly many historical examples of such things happening, but being this is the Goliath Chronicles, the writing is way too heavy-handed. Even Hitler and Stalin didn't openly call for genocide at campaign rallies. Not to mention the last episode established that most of the public see gargoyles as dangerous animals. Wouldn't there be efforts to protect a very dangerous species? Maybe this could have been more subtly done and more intelligently done, that he was simply calling for capturing and relocating the gargoyles?
On tonight. Your families, your jobs, putting food on the table? Or is there a new worry in your life? Something dark, something unknown, something with wings.
Also, judging by the crowds this guy gathers, I don't think the gargoyles have much to worry about from this guy.
Elect me, and that will change. To prove it, I will capture and exterminate at least one gargoyle before the election.
We cut to Lexington, who's entertaining baby Alex, Xanatos and Fox's son, until he hears a weird sound.
This easy for you, Mr. Xanatos. Tell me where I can find a gargoyle, and I'll be on my way.
I don't know anything about gargoyle.
Perhaps my new partner here can persuade you.
Let him go! There's a gargoyle here, in the rubble!
Nice try.
This scene leaves open some big questions. Late into Season 2, we find out that Fox's mother and Alex's grandmother is actually Titania, Queen of the Fairy Folk, and thus Alex has potential magic. We find out that in the same episode that Xanatos' partner, Owen, was actually the trickster fairy Puck. The episode ends with Puck being stripped of his magic except when training or protecting Alexander, and is appointed his guardian by Lord Oberon. So then why doesn't he use his fairy powers to protect Alexander from the kidnappers? The best explanation I can find for why Owen doesn't turn into Puck is that he was knocked out by the kidnappers before he could work his magic. Okay, I guess that's an okay explanation, but why is none of this backstory ever mentioned anywhere in this episode? It seems really important, and they really could have had fun with this backstory. For example, they could have had baby Alexander levitating things, which would freak out the kidnappers behind the scenes from things he learned from his magic lesson. But no, all of this is completely and utterly ignored. And that's probably the biggest problem with the Goliath Chronicles as a whole. A show with often a flowing continuity is now replaced with a show where characters seem to forget backstory all the time whenever it suits the writers. To show Lexington deeply cares about the baby, he wants to go searching for him right before sunrise. But then they all remind him that they turned to stone at sunrise, and Lex is like,
What? Who took him?
I don't know, but we all have to go look for him.
No.
"Oh yeah, I did turn to stone during the day." And they wait till the next night. The next day, the kidnappers give Xanatos an ultimatum that he has to give them a gargoyle in order to get his son back, and that leads to, by far, my biggest problem with this episode.
How could you refuse them, David? Get one of those gargoyles to the library steps right now. The kidnappers are waiting. Think of our son.
I am thinking of him, but caving into this kind of extortion won't be the end of our troubles. If stealing Alex is successful, what about next month? And the next? It ends tonight.
Oh boy, did that piss me off. Fox in the first 2 seasons is portrayed as something of a badass. She was a member of the pack and was frequently shown as strong and capable. Look how she reacts to someone trying to take her baby in season 2.
Over my dead body.
As you wish.
No.
Here she quickly gives in to despair, behaves irrationally, and relies on her husband to take command of the situation. In the end, can't think to do anything other than sit back in her chair and cry about her missing baby. You know, I'm really no fan of most modern feminists, but if they complained about this episode, I would have to totally agree with them. This is an absolutely disgraceful attempt to take a strong and commanding female character and turn her into a weak and fragile character who requires a strong man to take control, or she'll do something stupid, emotional, and irrational. What a load. So Lex, in order to save the baby, decides to turn himself in, and is strapped into a wheel thingy, I guess, that is perfectly designed for Lexington's size. How did the kidnappers possibly know it would be Lexington who would show up and the exact size he would be? What if Goliath had shown up instead? The kidnappers would have had absolutely no way of holding him, as that little wheel would not have held a gargoyle his size. That's what I mean about the Goliath Chronicles continuity. Characters seem to constantly forget things when it's convenient for the plot, and here magically know things they shouldn't possibly know. Lex is taken to a rally full of idiots throwing things at him for no reason, who can't even seem to spell their signs. You know, I think that mistake was probably intentional on the animator's part, saying that people who give in to bigoted politicians probably aren't the brightest bulbs. That is probably totally true. Lex figures out that Doyle is the kidnapper, something that surprised absolutely nobody above the age of 1, because he has the same helicopter Alex was taken in. Yeah, Doyle, your plan is incredibly stupid. If your plan was to gin up anti-gargoyle sentiment in order to help your anti-gargoyle platform get elected, why not simply frame the gargoyles for things they didn't do? Yes, that would be completely unethical, but so is kidnapping a baby. Why this weird convoluted plan of kidnapping a baby in order to have Xanatos hand him over a gargoyle? What does that accomplish? Also, who the hell arrives there in a helicopter? His campaign headquarters is only a couple blocks away.
And though I would prefer to rid the planet of this pest, I will trade the creature to the kidnappers once they return the Xanatos baby.
An even bigger plot hole. Wouldn't Lexington have figured out Doyle was the kidnapper not because they have the same helicopter, but because he turned himself into the kidnappers, and now he's at a Doyle campaign rally? Not to mention, wouldn't Doyle know that Xanatos would figure it out due to that as well? If the gargoyle that you turned into the kidnappers was at your campaign rally, that would automatically expose you as the fucking kidnapper. You are the dumbest politician, Doyle, since Hank Johnson.
I don't know how many square miles that is. Do you happen to know?
I don't have that figure with me, sir. I can certainly supply it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, my fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
Doyle! He's the kidnapper!
How do you know?
It's the same helicopter that kidnapped Alex. Where is he?
I think I know.
Lisa, armed with this information, heads to Doyle's campaign headquarters where she thinks the baby is being held.
Not far from where I think the baby is.
Wait, that needs to be played again. Who the hell painted this road? I know that's a nitpick, but wouldn't New York traffic be an absolute nightmare if traffic lanes were less than half the width of a fucking car? Not to mention, why are these roads empty in downtown New York City? I mean, we know that the people aren't at the Doyle campaign rally, that's for sure. Where the fuck is everybody? So the gargoyles break through all of Doyle's henchmen and into his headquarters, and in typical bad guy henchman fashion, none of them can shoot for shit. And they rescue the baby. Yeah, the poor animation quality in this action sequence really does demonstrate the huge drop in animation quality between the first two seasons and the Goliath Chronicles. To demonstrate, let me show you an action sequence from the end of Season 2. The animation this season isn't really bad per se, but it's just typical 90s animation, where the show used to be a clear cut above that. Xanatos and Fox arrive at the rally with their baby given to them by the gargoyles, and he immediately indicts Doyle for his various criminal behavior right before the crowd.
My son is safe. He was found hidden in Mr. Doyle's campaign headquarters.
No.
This was a sick attempt by Mr. Doyle to make political gain from endangering the life of an innocent child. Sick and criminal. Arrest that man.
And if you thought the portrayal of Fox was bad earlier, here she lets an unarmed old man in a business suit simply walk over, rip her baby right out of her hands, and hold the baby hostage without putting up any resistance whatsoever. So Lex breaks out and saves the baby in front of the crowd, ending Doyle's genocidal campaign. And the episode ends with an adorable scene of Lex turning to stone while holding the child, and the baby hugging Lex's petrified face. So that was Gargoyles The Goliath Chronicles Ransom. And it was very clear after this episode that the show was moving in the wrong direction. The episode's concept of a dirty politician going to criminal lengths to get elected and using fear and bigotry to do so isn't a bad one, but the execution is a mess. The complex characterization of villains the show has been known for is replaced here by a Captain Planet villain whose convoluted motivation is as thin as a spider's web. But the worst thing about this episode is how the show ruins one of the original series' strongest characters, turning her from a strong, commanding badass to a weak and fragile woman which is really infuriating. Well, that episode was pretty damn bad, and if you think that's the worst this season offers, I assure you it's not. Join me next time as we continue our journey through Gargoyles The Goliath Chronicles. I'm some loudmouth on the internet, and you just heard my opinion. Special thanks to my two awesome patrons, Connor Johnson and Humane Minds, and if anyone else would like to become a patron of mine, the link will be in the description. Also, please follow me on Twitter at Twitter handle LoudmouthR, and share, like, and subscribe for more Loudmouth views, commentaries, and editorials.